Cameron in the West in a showdown with Putin over Ukraine. The Russian leader is ordered to stop arming the rebels and remove his troops or face tough new sanctions. Also on the programme, Miliband criticises Sports Direct over zero-hour contracts. And 30 years on, the stars from then and now remake the Christmas Band-Aid single.
This is ITV News with Charlene White.
Good evening. David Cameron today bluntly ordered President Putin to stop destabilising Ukraine or face tough new sanctions. The Prime Minister, Europe and America have all told the Russian leader he must stop arming the separatist rebels in the east of the country and pull out his troops. Downing Street described the talks on the fringes of the G20 summit in Australia as a robust exchange. Russian officials later said Mr. Putin will leave the summit early. From Australia, our diplomatic correspondent John Ray reports.
It began with a traditional welcome from native Australians. It has continued with the now traditional summit standoff between Vladimir Putin and his Western rivals. At issue, renewed fighting in Ukraine, with Europe and the US threatening even harsher retaliatory sanctions.
Russia must stop the inflow of weapons and troops from its territory into Ukraine. And Russia must withdraw those already present in Donbass.
President Putin's very presence here has prompted protests by those who blame him for the deaths of Australians on board the downed MH17 airliner. Australia's Prime Minister demanded an apology. Instead, he got a handshake and managed a forced smile of greeting. But private talks between Mr. Putin and David Cameron were described as robust. Mr. Putin insists he's committed to peace. The Prime Minister told us he's heard all that before.
If you're asking me, am I satisfied that the undertakings that we've heard before have been stuck to? No, of course I'm not.
I'm asking you whether you think President Putin is a man of his word.
Well, so far we haven't seen his actions follow up the statements that he's given on previous occasions. I can't be much clearer than that, but the point is there's a real choice here. There is a different and better way for Russia to behave that could lead to an easing of relations, but at the moment he's not taking that path.
Russia's leader doesn't lack allies here, but he does revel in his role as rebel against the West.
Vladimir Putin came here backed by a flotilla of warships stationed off the Australian coast. David Cameron dismissed that as macho posturing. Still, it's hardly the action of a president about to back down. John Ray, ITV News, Brisbane.
Miliband has increased his attack on so-called zero-hours contracts by criticising a major high street chain. The Labour leader described the practice as Victorian and singled out Sports Direct as a terrible employer for too many of its staff. Here's our political correspondent, Emily Morgan.
It's the largest sporting retailer in the UK and the Labour leaders just picked a fight with it. Sports Direct's use of regular zero-hours contracts, Ed Miliband says, is immoral and should be banned.
Zero-hours contract is the way Sports Direct employs the vast majority of its workforce. Now, these Victorian practices, the epidemic of zero-hours contracts that we see at Sports Direct, have no place in the 21st century.
The controversial contracts allow companies to employ staff with no guarantee of work. But Mr. Miliband says he'll force companies to offer regular contracts if staff are working regular hours. Last year, there were 1.4 million zero-hours contracts in the UK, affecting more than 500,000 people, many of whom have more than one. And Labour claims 17,000 of Sports Direct's 20,000 UK employees are on one of these. The company says it is continuing to update and improve its employment procedures. It was recently forced to rewrite its zero-hour contracts, making it clearer that staff are entitled to holiday and sick pay. Those changes came about after one former employee launched a legal challenge against them. By talking policy, Ed Miliband's hoping to return the focus from his leadership troubles. It's a bold move taking on such a large company, but one he'll be hoping will pay off at the election. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Westminster.
Patients are being warned to stay away from Colchester Hospital in Essex unless they have a life-threatening or serious condition. That follows a surprise inspection by the Care Quality Commission, which said it had safeguarding concerns after examining the hospital's accident and emergency services on Wednesday. Fire officials have called for electronic e-cigarettes to carry safety warnings after more than 100 fires have been linked to the devices over the past 2 years. And the Comet probe Philae has fallen silent after its batteries ran down, but it did manage to transmit an extra flood of data before shutting down. The SNP's new leader, Nicola Sturgeon, claims the party could hold the balance of power at Westminster after the next general election. She used her keynote speech at the party's conference to urge voters to back them, claiming a vote for Labour at the last election ended up giving Scotland a Tory government, and warned voters not to do the same again.
What we will need are strong SNP MPs who will stand up to the Tories, challenge the despicable politics of Nigel Farage and fight Scotland's corner.
Rugby and England have lost to South Africa by 36 points to 28 at Twickenham. The Springboks scored 3 tries, including this one from Cobus Raynack. England were trailing 20 points to 6 early in the second half, but tries from David Wilson, Ben Morgan and Ben Barrett narrowed the gap, but it wasn't enough. And it was a different story in Cardiff. Wales lead Fiji 17-6. George North opened the scoring with this try. Alex Cuthbert added a second, and the third came courtesy of a penalty try. Fiji had a player sent off late in the second half. And Wayne Rooney will win his 100th international cap when he plays in today's Euro qualifier against Slovenia. The England captain said it will be a special moment and an incredible feeling. And you can see the whole match live here on ITV. Coverage starts straight after this programme. And finally, a host of music stars from One Direction to Bono have been remaking the Band Aid single Do They Know It's Christmas. It'll be released on Monday in aid of Ebola victims. Sasha Williams saw them arrive for today's recording.
Many of the stars arriving at the recording studio today weren't even born when the first Band Aid single was released. But the men behind the whole thing hope that by having the likes of One Direction and Ollie Murs on board this time, it can mean a whole new set of fans ready to buy. The original song raised more than £8 million for famine relief in Ethiopia in 1984. 20 years later, this version was released to fund food aid in war-torn Sudan. Now today's pop stars are collaborating to raise money for the Ebola crisis.
We've had to change the lyrics because it's no longer happily to do with people starving. It's to do with people dying of a disease that could arrive here. It doesn't matter if you like the track, to buy this song, we will stop the virus.
Even with some seasoned band-aiders at the helm, not everything today went smoothly.
Poor Ed Sheeran turned up after having done his homework last night and looking at the original version, and he learned Dizzy Rascal's rap from 10 years ago, and of course he turns up, we've changed the lyrics.
Hopefully he learned those new lyrics pretty quickly, because the song will be debuted tomorrow night on the X Factor before it's released on Monday. Sasha Williams, ITV News.
Well, that's it from us. We'll be back with the late news at 5 to 11. Until then, have a great evening. Goodbye.
A warm outlook. Worcester Bosch sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello and a very good evening to you. So we are expecting further outbreaks of rain to the northeast of Scotland and still 1 or 2 showers just clipping the south coast there. If you do catch one, they could be on the sharp side. Although for the rest of us, it will be largely dry as we go through tonight. Some clear skies, so that will allow temperatures to fall cool enough for a touch of frost in some areas. And then also, we're going to see some mist and fog developing too. So that will take us into a murky start to the day tomorrow. So mist and fog could be slow to lift throughout tomorrow, but eventually it will allow a bit of brightness to develop. And then towards the end of the afternoon, more rainfall will be spilling into Scotland and coastal areas. Though for many of us, not feeling too bad in that sunshine. We're looking at highs tomorrow of 13 degrees or 55 in Fahrenheit.
A warm outlook. Worcester Bosch sponsors ITV National Weather.